Hello, so today we're going to talk about the not so humble kale. Thank you, Annette. So, kale is one of those vegetables that has taken on something of a superfood status, if you like. It's not a term that we always like to use because it makes it sound as though it's a bit of a fad or an overhyped trend. But it's really, for us, it has become a super food. And it's one of those foods that I remember mentioning to my father um, that we were eating it, and he said, "Eating kale." He said, "Well, that's something that like we used to use. It used to be left in the fields as it was a crop that people didn't really kind of bother with much. It was a bit of a kind of like a poor person's vegetable, but there may be a therefore a link with that that's become slightly unfair to the kale because we think it's absolutely fabulous in terms of its nutrition. So Annette's going to add a little bit of context to that.
Yes, I am because I had a look at the nutrition this morning. We had kale this morning as part of our breakfast. We might tell you more about that later if you're really lucky. And we had 50 grams each, which is not a small portion. Again, like the last two things that we've described, they were good for B vitamins, other than B12, especially B2 in this case. Other vitamins that were good, vitamin A is excellent. Obviously, this is beta carotene, gets converted to vitamin A. Vitamin C is good, and the vitamin K, which I'll come back to in a minute. But the star of the show for me, because this is a big revelation to me, is the amount of calcium in it. So in that 50 milligrams, there was 127, 50 grams, there was 127 milligrams of calcium. That gives me 18% of my daily requirement, which is 700 milligrams in Britain. And that's stunning to me because for years, probably the best part of 2 decades, I've not been having dairy. And for a number of years, I was very worried about my bones because everybody was suggesting to me, either directly or indirectly, that I would probably crumble in some way if I didn't have dairy for my bones. But in fact, you get excellent calcium in a lot of leafy greens, and kale is particularly superb in that. But the vitamin K is supportive of bone health. So you're getting that straight away as well. And vitamin C, you need vitamin C for bone. People don't seem to remember that part. But the other couple of things I wanted to mention, and this is another surprise, is the omega-3 content. It's not enormous, but I don't think we associate leafy greens with having any fat in at all, but they do. And the fact that they do have a good ratio between omega-3 and 6. So that can be a contribution to omega-3 levels, especially if you're willing to eat quite a lot of leafy greens. And the other surprise is, for some people at least, and for us at some point, I think, that the level of protein. It makes a contribution to all the essential amino acids, all of them. And this means that if you keep eating plant foods, you're going to get your amino acids covered. You're very, very, very likely to get them covered in the day, the full protein allowance, unless you're eating exclusively fruit. And most people don't do that. So, did you want to continue on any of that?
Yeah, so picking up on a couple of things there that Annette mentioned. So the omega-3 is obviously it's really key. And just to reiterate, when you're eating a plant-based diet, that's one of the questions that you will always get asked. Where do you get your omega-3? So a lot of people are surprised when they find out you can get it from vegetables. So that's a really good point. Annette also mentioned protein. Again, how many times have we been asked where do we get our protein? And where do you get all your essential amino acids, which Annette just mentioned? Kale has all the essential amino acids. And again, a lot of people assume that you're missing out on those when you're following a plant-based diet, but you're actually not. You just need to make sure that you meet your calorie requirements across the day to get sufficient. But that's why you eat food, to get your calorie requirements to fuel your energy. The other thing is the calcium. And calcium is, again, it's one of those minerals like iron, for example, and zinc that certain leafy greens are rich in something called oxalates or oxalic acid. And that prevents the absorption of some of those minerals. It kind of binds to the minerals and prevents them being bioavailable, if you like, so available to the body. Now, spinach is one particular example where you wouldn't actually get much of the iron from spinach, even though it is rich in iron
and calcium
as well, because of the oxalates. It is rich in oxalates, but kale is actually lower in oxalates, so you are actually going to get the available calcium. So that's worth bearing in mind, because sometimes people just say it's almost a blanket statement. You don't get calcium or iron or other minerals from leafy greens because of the oxalates, but it's only certain leafy greens or vegetables that actually contain the high amounts.
But don't stop eating spinach. It's fantastic. Yeah. Just don't necessarily rely on it for some of those key minerals like the calcium and iron, because they might not be so able to give you what you need.
So, Annette, would you like to give some examples as to how we actually
use it? Yeah, definitely. Well, as I said, we had it this morning. And what we do is we make a green smoothie with kale and other things. We put sweet things in it as well. A couple of dates. Sometimes we put grapes in. We didn't have any today. To sweeten it up. We also have a tendency to often add things like spirulina, just to give it a bit of a boost. That's full of protein as well, just in case anybody is on the verge of going plant-based and worried about protein. I don't think there's a better protein source on earth, is there really?
Spirulina. No, it's certainly, yeah.
And I don't just mean plant-based. It's a superb source of protein. We make a green smoothie, which we then pour over lots of different chopped fruit. And it really is rather sensational. So rather than having a quick smoothie to glug down and lie quite heavy on your stomach, and it's too quick. Sometimes it's too quick to have a smoothie like that. With having the fruit in it and something to chew on, something to get the juices out of, you still taste all the individual bits of fruit. I'm already ecstatic just thinking about it. It's that good. Honestly, it might not be your thing, but we love it. So that's one of our uses.
I think it's actually unique to us, this recipe as well. Because
nobody else does it.
We did this because we were finding when we were having smoothies, like everything, all the fruit, everything together, that it was giving such a blast of nutrition and sweetness that I was finding actually in terms of digesting it, it was sitting quite heavy.
It's too much too quickly.
Yeah. So what we decided was let's leave the fruit in its whole form, chop it up. So apple, orange, kiwi, sometimes papaya, mango, and have that whole, and banana of course, have that whole like a fruit salad, and then just add the smoothie mix, which is the more green element, including the kale, on top of it. So it's almost like a sauce. And it's slightly sweetened, as Annette says, with dates, and we sometimes put a lime in there as well.
Absolutely, that's really good. Yeah.
Absolutely sensational. We absolutely love it, and we actually have it virtually every day at the moment. So that's really good. The other thing that we also do with kale, so obviously some people may not want to eat their kale raw. We actually do, but you wouldn't eat kale.
Well, we tend to chop it if we're eating it raw, don't we? We eat it in small, like a chopped salad. So in the Maggi mix, which is over there, you can't see it, but it is.
It's quite a coarse leaf. It's quite hard work just to chew it as is. So you do really need to do something with it if you're eating raw, along the lines of what we've just discussed. But the other thing that we do as well, and it may be of interest to anyone that's listening to this, is if you just lightly steam it, literally for about 2 minutes, it tends to just kind of like, I suppose, blanch it, and it becomes almost like juicy.
It just takes the edge off it, doesn't it?
And it's delicious, isn't it?
It is a really good way of doing it.
Yeah.
If you want to be eating kale but think, well, yeah, eating it raw just doesn't suit me, I don't like it, that does make a difference.
So if you're already using your steamer to do something else, you might want to just like pop the kale in the top just a couple of minutes before it's finished, just to kind of, and then serve it all up together. That's one thing that we find.
And
we've only got one steamer. That's another reason we do that.
And steaming is a great way of cooking things, because you don't actually lose very much nutritionally. It's one of the best ways of cooking things. So is there anything else we do with it? I think that's probably
it. So just remember, next time you go into the supermarket or your local grocers and see kale, don't dismiss it lightly.
Learn to love kale.
Okay, thank you.